Hey, Storystream fam, welcome back. If you made it through part one of The Wake of Ash, then you know this is no ordinary sea story. In part two, Liam is pulled deeper, not just into the ocean, but into his own buried memories. The hatch is open, the voices are calling, and what waits below the deck might be the truth he's been running from. If you're new here, you're just in time. The storm hasn't even started yet. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on that bell, because this chapter is where the drowning begins. The Wake of Ash, Part 2, The Reckoning. The anchor chain unspooled as if pulled by unseen hands. No creak of metal on metal, no splash of resistance. Just a smooth, silent descent that should have been impossible without mechanical aid. I stared at the windlass, frozen, as the last of the links vanished over the edge and the Sparrow began to drift backward. Not with the tide, there was no tide, but with purpose. It was taking me back to the circle, back to the mouth. I ran to the helm and tried to engage the motor. Nothing. The ignition clicked once, then died. The battery lights flickered. Dead again. I checked the fuel gauge, knowing it had been full. Empty. The sails hung limp, no wind to catch. It was as if the world had held its breath, and in doing so, rendered me powerless. I grabbed the emergency oar, just one, mounted near the stern, and dug it into the water, paddling furiously to shift direction, to break the pull. My muscles strained. Sweat poured down my face, but the boat didn't move. It resisted. The sea itself was holding me. By the time I gave up, the ring beneath the boat was visible again, clearer than before. No longer murky or lost in depth. It was just there, looming below like the eye of something enormous. The journal lay open on the deck. I hadn't taken it out. A new page. Atonement is not resistance. To remember is to descend. I kicked it across the planks, but it didn't slide far. The pages fluttered against the windless air, then stilled. I told myself I wouldn't go back in the water, that I'd wait this out, find a way to call for help. I still had the flare gun. Maybe a plane would see me, a ship, but I knew it was a lie. Whatever I'd woken beneath the sea, it wasn't going to let me go. I sat for hours on the deck, back to the mast, arms wrapped around my knees. I watched the circle below the surface shift in color, green, then blue, then violet. The water glowed faintly even in daylight. Then I heard it again. A knock. This time not on the hull, but from below the deck, inside the boat. I hesitated, grabbed the flare gun, and crept to the companionway. The sound came again, 3 short raps, deliberate, not like creaking wood or shifting cargo. Knuckles, on a door that shouldn't be there. I descended, each step a war between fear and instinct, and there it was, the storage hatch behind the bunk. An ordinary access panel for wiring and equipment was open. Inside, darkness. And steps. Steps that hadn't existed yesterday. Not stairs built into the hull. These were stone, crumbling, damp, cut into the impossible space where only a crawl space should be. The boat had changed. Or I had. My breath caught in my throat as I leaned in. I held the flare gun out ahead like a torch. The air that wafted up was warm and damp, like the breath of something ancient and sick. A sound drifted from below, a murmur, chanting, voices, dozens, maybe hundreds. They were whispering a name, my name. I stepped back. No, not yet. I needed to think. I climbed back above, slammed the hatch shut, and lashed it with a coil of rope. Then I fired the flare into the sky, watching the red streak arc into the pale blue. It fizzled and fell into the sea with a hiss. No echo, no cry, no answer. The sea had swallowed the signal, like it swallowed everything else. I collapsed at the stern, exhausted. I didn't remember falling asleep. When I woke, it was night. The moon was gone. Stars too. A pitch-black sky mirrored by blacker water. I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began, but I could see the circle, lit from within now. It glowed red, like the core of a volcano, symbols pulsing along its edge in rhythmic sequence. In the center, the mouth yawned wider than before, waiting. The rope I'd used to lash the hatch was gone. So was the flare gun. I found myself standing at the companionway before I realized I'd moved. My body moved like it had been summoned. Inside, the hatch was open again. A warm wind wafted from the impossible stairwell. The chanting was louder. I could almost make out words. Return, restore, remember? I should have run. I should have jumped overboard and let the sea take me. But I stepped down instead. One foot, then the other. The stone was slick beneath my bare feet, covered in moss that smelled faintly of iron and salt. The walls closed around me. The steps spiraled deeper and deeper into a shaft that should never have existed inside the hull of a 26-foot cutter. But the logic of the world didn't apply here anymore. And I knew, deep in the marrow of my bones, that this was where I was always meant to go. At the bottom, a door waited, tall, rounded at the top, carved from something like bone. The surface writhed with symbols that shifted when I tried to focus. In the center, a single phrase was carved in perfect, unmistakable script. There is no forgiveness, only return. I reached for the door, and as I touched it, I heard my voice whisper behind me. Not a memory. My voice. Me. Whispering. I never meant for them to drown. The door swung open, and darkness welcomed me in. The door closed behind me without a sound. No creak of hinges, no scrape of bone on stone. It simply ceased to be a door, becoming part of the wall behind me. Featureless, smooth, final. I stood in complete darkness, my breath loud in my ears, my heart pounding like a fist against my ribs. I didn't call out. Some part of me knew the silence was not empty, that if I gave voice to anything here, something would answer. Instead, I moved forward, one hand trailing along the wall, its texture cold and damp like flesh left too long in water. My bare feet made no sound, though I stepped on stone. The passage was narrow but not claustrophobic. It curved slightly, leading me deeper into the dark with certainty that felt preordained. There was no smell, not of rot or mold, not of the sea, only a sterile stillness, like the inside of something dead and hollow. And then came the sound, distant at first, a low hum, rhythmic and layered. Voices, yes, but mechanical too. It reminded me of the groan of a ship's hull under pressure, the way it speaks to you in metal. As I drew closer, I realized it wasn't a sound I was hearing. It was a memory. My memory. I turned a corner, and the walls fell away. I found myself in a chamber lit by a soft, amber glow from veins of crystal embedded in the rock above. They pulsed gently like a heartbeat. In the center of the room stood a pool, perfectly round, edged with stone carved in that same looping, alien language. The water within was impossibly still, black as pitch, yet faintly reflective. As I approached, images shimmered on the surface. It was the boat, not the sparrow now, but months ago, before I'd been banished, before the trial, before the silence. I saw myself standing on the deck, laughing, a bottle in hand. The sound of voices raised in celebration, slurred and careless. And then came the crash. The sky darkened. The waves surged. Screams. I turned away from the pool. My stomach heaved, but I forced it down. I'd relived this night 100 times in my head, but never like this, never so visceral. On the opposite side of the chamber, another doorway opened. Beyond it, a hallway that glowed faintly red. I stepped through. The corridor narrowed, its walls closer now. Breathing almost, the air grew heavy, dense with emotion I couldn't name. Regret? Fear? Guilt? Then I heard her voice. Liam. Soft. Familiar. Close. I froze. Mira. I hadn't heard her name spoken aloud since the tribunal. I wasn't supposed to. We were forbidden to speak of the dead. The hallway twisted into another chamber, smaller than the first. In the center, a figure stood facing the wall, long dark hair, a shape I knew like the back of my own hand. Mira? I whispered. She didn't move. I took a step closer. Is it really? She turned, and I saw that her eyes were gone. 2 gaping holes, black and weeping seawater. Her mouth opened, and instead of words came a wave of static, a shrieking chorus of overlapping voices. I fell to my knees, hands clamped to my ears, but it didn't stop the sound. Then she stepped toward me, not walking, gliding. With each motion, water spilled from her feet, spreading across the floor like a tide. You left us, she said in 1,000 voices. You called the storm. You sank the ship. No, I gasped, backing away. I didn't know, I didn't mean. You were captain. She raised one hand, and the water rose with it, wrapping around my legs, my arms, pulling me down. The chamber vanished. The floor dissolved into waves. I was drowning again, but not in sea. In memory, the voices surrounded me. Mira, Jonah, Kira, even old Barrett, who hadn't said 10 words the whole voyage. All of them dead, all of them screaming. You get a year to remember, a year to relive. I opened my mouth to scream, but water filled it. I thrashed, reached out. The flare gun. Where was a flare gun? But I wasn't on the boat anymore. I was in the sea, the original sea, that final night, as the storm took hold. Lightning shattered the sky above me. The mast broke in two, crashing down into the water with Mira still tied to it. Jonah had gone below decks to check the ballast. Kira had slipped trying to get her harness clipped. They died screaming. I watched, frozen. I could have helped. I didn't. I dove again back into the water, but not to save them. I dove for the bottle. The one I dropped. The one I didn't want found. When I surfaced, they were gone, and I was alone. I gasped awake on the floor of the stone chamber. The pool still shimmered. The hallway to Mira was gone, but something had changed. There was a mark on my palm now, a symbol, cut deep, the same one that had been carved on the mast, the one from the forehead of the creature in the water. I didn't remember how it got there, but I knew what it meant. The circle wasn't just a place. It was a sentence, and I had only begun to serve mine. I sat by the pool until the lights in the crystal veins dimmed, pulsing slower, like something dying. The mark on my hand throbbed with its own rhythm, dull, insistent. I hadn't tried to wash it off. I knew better. It wasn't ink. It wasn't even blood. It was part of me now, etched deeper than flesh. The chamber felt tighter somehow, as if the walls had edged inward while I wasn't looking. The silence was no longer peaceful. It pressed against my ears, daring me to speak, to call out. I didn't. Instead, I stood and walked back the way I come, but the corridor was gone. In its place, a tunnel of wood and iron, familiar and not. It reminded me of the lower deck of the Sparrow, but everything was warped. The beams slanted unnaturally. Ropes curled along the ceiling like veins. And the smell, it wasn't the brine of the sea anymore. It was decay. I stepped inside and the air changed. It grew heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. I could hear the sea, faintly, waves slapping hull, creaks of a ship adrift, but none of it was real. This place wasn't floating. It was remembering. The first door on the left bore Jonah's name, though he'd never had a cabin to himself. We were all too cramped for that. I opened it anyway. Inside was a child's room, a bunk bed, shelves filled with wooden boats, crayon drawings on the walls, a mobile made of sea creatures hanging from the ceiling. It turned slowly, though there was no wind. I stepped in and closed the door behind me. The moment I did, the floor fell away. I was standing on a dock now, a different time, a different place. Sunset bled across the sky, the water calm and pink. I saw myself, young, barely 17, talking to a man with sun-leathered skin and a missing eye, Captain Toller, the first man to teach me anything about the sea. "You ever run for what you've done, boy?" he asked. I remember shaking my head. "Don't. The ocean's memory is longer than yours." I blinked, and I was back in Jonah's room. But it wasn't the same anymore. The drawings had changed. Now they showed the storm. Dark scribbles, bent masts, drowning faces, and always a circle. I backed out and shut the door, my chest tight. Down the corridor, another door had appeared. Kira's. I didn't want to open it, but I did. It was a galley. She'd spent hours there, cooking meals no one deserved to eat as well as we did. She used some old folk songs while she worked, sleeves rolled up, curls tied back in a red bandana. She stood at the stove now, back to me, unmoving. "Kira?" She turned slowly. Her face was soaked. Her eyes wept seawater. Her mouth opened in a scream, but no sound came out, only a jet of salt water, spraying in a torrent that knocked me off my feet and slammed the door shut behind me. The corridor vanished again. Now there was only one path, a straight one. At the end, a mirror. I walked toward it, though everything in me screamed not to. In the reflection, I saw myself. But not now. Not the me with the mark and hollow eyes. It was the night of the wreck. I was in the cabin, holding the bottle, trying to decide if I could pour it out and pretend it was never there. I watched myself tuck it beneath the boards. I watched myself lie in silence while Mira screamed above, while the storm battered us from all sides. And then the other me turned and looked at me. Not the mirror me, not the reflection. Me, as if he'd known I was watching. And he smiled. "I kept us alive," he said. "They were weak. You were strong." I shook my head. "That's not what happened." He stepped through the glass like it was water. "Then tell me, Liam, why are you still here and they're not?" I backed away, stumbling. My heels hit stone. The corridor dissolved. The mirror gone. Now I was alone in a round room of solid black rock. No door, no pool, just walls that breathed and whispered. A low hum started, a frequency too low for sound, but I felt it in my bones. And from the ceiling, if it could be called that, a figure descended, not walking, not floating, unfolding, a woman's shape, not Mira, not Kira. This thing wore skin like a costume. Its face was blank, but familiar. Then it changed, into Mira, then into me, and then into something with a mouth where its eyes should be. and its voice, when it finally spoke, was not one, but many. You have only begun to drown. I tried to speak, but my tongue wouldn't move. My throat was filled with brine. You will not escape your year. I fell to my knees, coughing salt. The mark on my hand burned hot. And then I was back on the deck of the Sparrow. Just like that. The sun was rising. The sea was calm again. But I knew better now. I hadn't left the deep. The deep had followed me back. And I had 9 months left. When the sea returned, it was quiet. Too quiet. The Sparrow creaked lazily on a still tide. Sails limp. The wind little more than a breath on my neck. The sun hovered low on the horizon, painting everything gold and red, but offered no warmth. The light felt borrowed, as though it didn't belong in this place. I stood at the bow, hands gripping the railing. I didn't remember climbing out of the underdeck, nor waking in my bunk. One moment, I was kneeling on cold black stone, choking on salt. The next, I was here, and the mark was still on my palm. Not fresh anymore. It had begun to scab. No amount of salt water or scrubbing would make it fade. It pulsed faintly, responding to something I couldn't name, like a compass or a tether. Behind me, the ship groaned. I turned and looked down the deck. Nothing was out of place, not exactly, but everything felt off. The ropes were too clean. The wood lacked its usual warping. The sails hung in the same position they had an hour ago, unmoved by the faint breeze. And I was alone. I hadn't seen another living soul in days. Not since I emerged from the stone place, the memory labyrinth, whatever that infernal place had been. I had no idea if I truly escaped or simply stepped into a new layer of the trap. I went to the helm and stared down at the wheel. There, carved into brass where the ship's name had once been etched, was a symbol, faint, ancient, identical to the one on my hand. I didn't remember putting it there. I didn't think it was meant for me to understand. I checked the compass. It spun slowly, unanchored to any pole. It hadn't stopped once since the storm. I slammed the lid shut. Then I heard it again. That humming, faint and low, like a voice at the bottom of the ocean. It came from beneath the ship. I rushed to the starboard rail and leaned out, peering into the water. The surface was too still. It reflected the sky like glass, unbroken, pristine. And yet, below it, deep down, I saw a movement. A shape, massive, indistinct, too far to name. It glided just beneath the surface, leaving no wake, no ripple, like a shadow cast by something the sea refused to reveal. I squinted. For a moment, I thought I saw an eye, and then it was gone. The humming stopped. My skin crawled. Something was watching me. I moved quickly to the supply locker and tore it open, rifling through ropes, broken tools, old fishing gear. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. A flare gun? A harpoon? Some fragment of normalcy? Instead, I found a logbook. It hadn't been there before. It was waterlogged and bent, but still intact. When I opened it, the pages were blank, all except one near the center. I ran my fingers over the ink, reading words I had no memory of writing. The ship drifts, but I do not steer. The wheel is not mine. The deeper I go, the more I see. Not the ocean, but the mirror beneath it. The sins don't sink. They rise. The ink trailed off into a smear. Suddenly, the ship rocked, once violently. I dropped the logbook and stumbled across the deck, grabbing the mast for balance. Something had struck the hull. Then came the groan. Not wood, not metal, something alive. It echoed up through the boards beneath my feet. A wet, gurgling exhale that made my vision swim. I peered over the edge once more, and this time I saw it clearly. An appendage, long and thin, like a tentacle but wrong. It brushed the underside of the ship, not searching, stroking it. A caress. The shape below rose just enough to disturb the water's surface. And now, through that warping shimmer, I could make out details. Barnacle-encrusted flesh, a single curved fin, and a pattern of symbols etched across its back in burning red. The same symbols. The same mark. It wasn't a creature. It was wearing the sea like a cloak. I staggered back, hard in my throat. I turned to run, and there she was, Mira, standing on the other end of the deck, arms limp at her sides, hair wet and plastered to her face. "You have to go deeper," she said. I froze. "No," I whispered. "No more tricks. You're not real." Her eyes didn't blink. Her feet didn't move. But the air around her warped slightly, as if heat rose from her skin. "You'll never be free of it unless you finish the crossing." The crossing to where? She only smiled, and then she vanished. The sea stilled again. The ship no longer groaned. Whatever had touched it now swam deeper, leaving behind nothing but silence and still water. I picked up the logbook. The page I'd read before was now blank. In its place, just a single sentence, scratched in with a nail or something sharper. You have seen its shape. Now you will see its truth. They call it the dead calm. That eerie silence when the wind dies. The sails droop like mourning flags, and the ocean forgets how to breathe. You sit adrift, not sailing but suspended, a splinter in time. I had read about it once, but no story, no logbook had prepared me for this. It wasn't just the absence of wind. It was the absence of life. No gulls cried overhead. No dolphins danced in the surf. The water was a pane of unbroken glass. Not even a ripple from the sparrow's hull. The ship didn't move unless I moved it. And even then, it felt like dragging a corpse through molasses. I stopped keeping track of days. The sun rose and set like a ticking clock, but I'd lost the sense that it meant anything. Time didn't seem to pass here, not normally. I ate only when hunger reminded me, slept only when exhaustion took over. The mark on my hand itched constantly, and always the sensation of being watched. Not from the sky, from below. The shape beneath hadn't returned, not visibly, but I could feel it, skimming the bottom of the sparrow, circling, waiting, not for me to act, for me to change. Something was unraveling inside me. It started with the sounds, voices in the walls, whispers in the rigging. Once, I heard the distinct clink of cutlery in the galley, and when I went to look, there was a steaming bowl of stew sitting on the table. No fire in the stove, no footsteps to follow, but the food smelled real. It tasted like salt and memory. I ate every bite. Then came the shadows. They didn't fall right. Sometimes they bent away from the sun instead of toward it. Sometimes they moved when I didn't. I caught glimpses of figures standing at the rail. Kira, Mira, even Jonah, always at the edge of my vision, never when I turned to face them. One night, I woke to find the ship covered in seaweed. Thick, black, wet ropes of it, dripping down the sails and rigging like a shroud. I spent hours tearing it away. When the sun rose, it was gone, completely, as if I'd imagined it, but my hands were still stained green. Still, none of it compared to what happened that morning. I was coiling rope near the stern, trying to keep busy, when I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming up from below decks. My heart froze in my chest. I hadn't set foot in the crew's quarters since the storm. It felt like a tomb. The steps stopped. I turned. There she was. Tura, but younger, healthier. Her face wasn't soaked in seawater. No red bandana. No empty stare. She smiled, gently. Hey, stranger. My throat closed. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. You don't look so good, she said, walking closer. Her boots didn't make a sound on the boards. You've been eating? I nodded dumbly. Sleeping? Another nod. You still think you're alone? That one made me pause. I opened my mouth, forcing my voice to the lump in my throat. Aren't I? She stopped in front of me. Her eyes weren't glazed or hollow. They were warm, familiar, not even close. She reached out and touched the mark on my hand. Her fingers were warm. Do you remember what you said the night before the storm? My stomach flipped. No, I lied. She laughed softly. You do. You told me if we made it through, you'd leave the sea. You'd go inland. Find a town where no one knew your name. Start over. I did remember. I'd said it drunkenly, half to myself, half to her. And then you took the helm, she said. You made the call to outrun it. We would have sunk either way. She looked at me, and there was something sad in her gaze. Not angry, not accusing, just tired. Would we? I stepped back. You're not real. She tilted her head. Neither is this. The sea shuddered beneath us. The illusion cracked. She vanished, not like a ghost dissipating, but like a page being torn from a book. In her place stood something else. A figure wrapped in soaked rags, face hidden behind a salt-stained mask of kelp and bone. Its eyes were pinpricks of white light, and it held something in its hand, an hourglass, filled not with sand, but seawater. Tiny shadows swam within. The figure raised the hourglass. The water drained slowly into the lower chamber. 9 grains left. 9 months. It pointed at me. I stumbled back, heart pounding, and just like that, it was gone. No sound, no wind, just the sea. And the silence. I looked down at my hand. The mark had changed again. Now it wasn't just a symbol. It was an eye, watching, always open. And I knew something was coming. Something inevitable. And I wasn't prepared. Not to survive it, not to understand it. There's a sound ships aren't supposed to make. A slow, yawning crack that travels the length of the hull like a sigh from something ancient. That's what I heard that night. And I knew something was waking beneath the Sparrow. The ocean was glass once again. Moonlight pooled on its surface like mercury. I stood barefoot at the rail, hand wrapped tightly around the marked palm. The air smelled metallic, heavy. My breath steamed in the air even though it was summer. The stars above flickered. Some blinked out entirely. Something was wrong with the sky. But it wasn't the sky that broke first. It was the keel. A tremor ran through the ship, not from storm or tide, but from below. It was as if the Sparrow had scraped something buried under the waves, something solid that should not exist out here in open water. And then the groaning began, a deep, guttural moan, as though the sea itself were exhaling. I ran to the bow, gripping the railing, staring down. Beneath the ship, the water churned in a lazy spiral. I saw no creature, no reef, no rocks, but the water was rising, not like a wave, not like a storm. It rose in a perfect circular column, thick and black and rising without breaking, without spilling. It didn't move with gravity. It pulsed with intention. It rose to the bow, and from its heart, something stepped forward. Not climbed, not swam. Stepped. It was human-shaped, mostly. Tall, impossibly so, with limbs too long and too thin. Skin like polished driftwood, smooth and gray. Its face had no features, just the faintest outline of a mouth, stitched shut with black twine. It stopped just short of the bow, standing on the water like it was glass. Its head tilted, as if studying me. And then I felt it, a presence in my mind. Heavy, cold. It was speaking, not in words, in impressions, memories, feelings. I saw Myra's broken gaze in the storm. I saw Kira's fingers slipping from the rail. I saw the crew, their soaked bodies laid out like offerings on the deck. And then I saw myself, steering the Sparrow directly into the black heart of the tempest. Not to escape it, to find something inside it, something I had called. The stitched-mouthed figure reached one long finger toward me. I didn't move, couldn't. It brushed the mark on my hand, and the world fell away. Suddenly, I wasn't on the deck. I was beneath the ship, underwater, but not drowning. I floated in an endless black ocean, no surface above me, no floor below. Before me loomed a city, a drowned city miles wide, spiraling outward from a great obsidian spire. Ruins of towers and bridges stretched into the dark, covered in bioluminescent moss. Creatures swam between them, some fish-like, others not. Statues lined the city streets. Each one had my face. And in the center of it all, rising from the base of the spire, was the Sparrow, cocooned in coral, dead. The image shattered like glass, and I gasped back on the deck. The figure was gone, but something had been left behind. A piece of driftwood, roughly shaped like a mask. It bore a single carved word, confess. The deck was wet now, slick with seawater, but not from a wave, from footsteps. I followed them. They led toward the hold. My heart pounded as I descended the stairs. Each board groaned like it remembered the crew I'd lost. I lit the lantern at the base of the stairs and held it high. The hold was empty, except the far corner. A figure crouched there, wet, barefoot, shoulders shaking. It was Jonah. He was muttering something, over and over. No forgiveness in the deep. No forgiveness in the deep. No forgive. Jonah? My voice cracked. He didn't respond. I approached slowly, the lantern trembling in my grip. As I drew closer, I saw that he wasn't alone. There were others behind him, faces barely visible in the shadows. Some I recognized. Kira, Mira, some were strangers. All were watching. Not Jonah. Me. I dropped the lantern. Darkness swallowed everything. A single voice echoed from all corners of the hold. Low, deep, soaked in seawater and rot. You called us here. I stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. My chest heaved. From the darkness, footsteps, water sloshing, then silence. When I lit a match, I was alone again. No Jonah, no crew, no bodies. Only one thing remained in the hold. A mirror, framed in barnacles, its surface warped. I stepped forward, and what I saw in the reflection was not me. It wore my face, my clothes, but its eyes were black, and it smiled. And that's part 2 of the Wake of Ash. But something tells me Liam's journey is far from over. The sea remembers, the crew is watching, and the mark, it's spreading. Got a theory about the city beneath the waves, the stitch-mouthed figure, or why the boat is no longer just a boat? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading every one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you're the first to catch part 3. And if you want bonus content in shorter form like Reels, please give us a follow on Instagram at Storystream. Thanks for staying with us. The sea's not done yet.